Hello, all you badasses out there in the world of fantasy baseball. This is our live stream on Sunday evening. And we have started off late. So if you were expecting the live stream at the normal time and just come out late, sorry. Hey, it's fucking live. Hey, but the season has started. We've got, this is our fifth live stream episode. And today, the BadAzz fantasy baseball, it's the Viagra of fantasy baseball, provides a fun experience and a better performance. That shit works. So pay attention tonight. Let's share some information. If you catch me somehow on the live stream, although you really wouldn't know what the hell because I'm on late, but what the hell. Let me click on this and see if we're even on this damn thing. Oh, it says we're live, so we must be live. Let me turn that shit down. Oh shit. Yeah. That shit is a working. Hello, BadAzz fantasy baseball freaks out there. I'm going to send a hello on the chat. And if you do happen to catch me on the live podcast on YouTube tonight, shoot me a line. Tell me how you're doing. Let me know how the first few days are going with your fantasy baseball team. Oh, fuck. Dropped my goddamn pen. Okay, so we got 4 days in the books. And I wanted to welcome all you badasses out there. And BadAzz, let me adjust this mic. It's all fucked up. There we go. I think I got it now. It looks off. It's all fucked up, all fucked up. Hey, you badasses. This is Rudy, and I'm the host of the BadAzz Fantasy Baseball Podcast, bringing it to you here on Sunday evening, live from Alvin, Texas. As you know, the hometown of Nolan Ryan, Hall of Famer Nolan Ryan, and Nathan Evaldi, both graduates of Alvin High School, right here. Population 24,000 and something. Salute. 30 miles south of Houston, Texas. That's where we're coming at you today. Hope things are going well for you out there in your BadAzz fantasy baseball leagues. I hope you haven't suffered any injuries on your rosters yet, and I hope some of your guys that are kicking ass keep staying hot. Stay hot as long as you can when they get on those hot streaks. I wanted to thank my analytics department. As you know, if you've listened to me before or went through the BadAzz sessions and listened to those learning blocks, by the way, that are posted on our website at badazzsports.com. And remember, BadAzz is always spelled with two Z's instead of two S's. badazzsports.com. Go there and you can check out any of my previous podcasts and BadAzz sessions, our learning sessions, and you can catch up if you're behind, or just study up on something that you are interested in. Keep in mind, today I just dropped the fourth episode of BadAzz Sessions. So that's out there. That's out there where you, on YouTube, obviously, and then on audio streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So you can catch all that stuff there. But I wanted to thank my analytics department, and if you knew my organizational chart, well, let me just go back to it. It takes a while for everybody to get used to what the hell we're talking about. Okay, I'm going to go off the screen here for just a second, I think. Yeah, there I go. For you people on audio listening to this, I'm just going in and out of screens. And I'll try to, remember to focus on you out in the audio world that just listen to me on audio. I want to make sure that I'm able to describe some things in a way that you can also follow and or go back and look at some stuff later, and it'll make sense. Or you can go back and listen to this podcast over again sometime and go through the visual part of it, the video on YouTube or on the website. But you folks out there on the live stream and watching this later on YouTube can see my BadAzz team here. And this is really just to give you an idea, and it's basically an organizational chart. So, and that organizational chart starts with me, and in your case, it's you. You are the general manager and manager of your fantasy baseball team or teams. That's 2 positions with no fucking pay. So you better have a lot of fun doing this shit, because it's a lot of work. Unless you're playing in some prize leagues or money leagues. I mean, maybe you're playing for some money. I am this year a little bit. I usually don't play for much, but this year I played a couple of prize leagues. So part of your success as a fantasy baseball manager, and I like to go back to this because it's the essence of being good, is practicing and routinely practicing basic strategies using basic tools over and over. And they work year after year. So you as a general manager and manager need help. I mean, unless you're going to do all your research, as I've said before, I like to rely on some folks out there in the fantasy baseball podcast world to provide me timely data that helps me make decisions. So my analytics department is generally made up of CBS Fantasy, the CBS Fantasy Baseball folks out there. Let me say that again, CBS Fantasy Baseball Today folks. Scott, Frank, Chris, all those. Chris, there's 2 Chris's. But I appreciate it. Enjoy listening to you throughout the season, and it helps me tremendously. And, of course, I watch the MLB Network, and I should add MLB TV. I have that package, so I can actually watch some games, check in on some games, and watch certain players and get my eyes on who I'm looking at or interested in maybe adding to my roster. And thirdly is Fantasy Pros. That's another really top-notch fantasy baseball podcast. So appreciate Joey P. and the Welsh out there, Chris Welsh, for providing really professional analysis and data. And you just go around in the circle. The org chart comes back to me, basically, or you in this case, where you take that analytical data and your just own general philosophies about likes and dislikes about baseball. And then you just kind of incorporate that all with your research and strategy. And this is what I call the strategies and implementation department. That's a fancy-ass name for basically saying it's me, myself, and I. And then the governing body, which if you follow this chart and you're on an audio feed right now, it's basically an organizational chart that's circular, or in this case, it's shaped like a pentagon. And I have five groups to try to describe what it is to have a winning team and utilizing all facets out there to be better. The next one in line, and again, we started at the top with general manager, which is you, which is me, people out there playing fantasy baseball with your teams. Then you have your analytics department, and I have a triad of those. And then you go around and get back on the organizational chart around to me again in developing strategies, implementation for your season. And then as you come up and circle that organizational chart, you get to the governing body, which is whatever platform you play on, or the commissioner, which resides over a private league that you're in. The governing body in that they provide or serve as setting league scoring and league rules, and different settings that they can make and to set up those league settings and scoring. So that's the governing body. So you can't change those rules. You just have to learn how to be most effective within those league settings and rules. And then you get back to us. But anyway, I wanted to cover that again because I feel like it's important, it's kind of the foundation of what I do. So anyway, here I am back. Here I am, BadAzz. Hey, I don't see nobody writing me. I think it's kind of late, so maybe the people out there are hanging this shit up tonight on a Sunday evening, which I wouldn't blame you. All right, let me talk about dates coming. The only dates I got to say right now for a while will be just to remind you of the live streams every Sunday at 7 p.m. Central. And I will be on at 7 p.m. Central next week. You can count on that shit like you can count on the sun rising in the morning. I spent a lot of time in the Army, and I'll tell you, after being late tonight, getting to finish all this work tonight to get the BadAzz sessions out and get that posted, the 4th episode, and then get this 5th episode of the live stream out tonight, I just felt like even though it's going to be late, some of y'all can look at this later on and not live and still get the information. So again, we got 4 days in the books of competition in your fantasy baseball league. Don't freak out if you're getting beat. I think I'm behind in all my leagues. All 3 of my Yahoo leagues that we focus on in this, basically in this podcast as a priority. So don't feel bad when you're behind. In this case, it's a long week, and it's the first week. But you should be very actively doing some other things right now because it's early in the season and there's a lot of activities that go on that can greatly affect your team for the rest of the season by improving that team. So we got 4 days in the books, and I wanted to bring to you a new segment called Velo Heroes. And the reason why I wanted to bring that to you, and it's a visual, but you can listen to the music and stuff. But what the focus of Velo Heroes segment is I want to highlight, and we'll ebb and flow some of this, but I want to highlight generally, in a general sense, and we'll include different kind of statistics and stuff. But I want to kind of keep it basic and just say who's hot and who's hot, who's not, but more importantly, who's hot. I mean, who's really performing. And so Velo Heroes, as a pitcher, I want to try to highlight people who just had some really good performances of fantasy significance. And it's tailored typically towards high velocity pitchers that have a high swinging strike rate, high swing and miss, whiff percentage, a combination of those things. We'll try to highlight some of those pitchers who are really pumping up the gas and bringing it to home plate. And then also Velo Heroes on the batter side, we'll just try to touch on some fantasy relevant people who are hitting the ball very fucking hard, basically. Because if you ask any of the major league batters and stuff about hitting, what's their goal, what's their strategy, I think almost every single one I've ever heard interviewed about that will talk about or mention simply, I'm trying to hit the ball hard. So we're going to talk about who's hitting the ball hard, because you want people on your fantasy baseball team that typically hit the ball pretty hard. So without further ado, to you people that are watching this on the YouTube on video, I'm going to break away from my webcam, and we're going to open up Velo Heroes. So I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Velo.
And he delivers the pitch. 100. And he's coming on the line. Here comes the pitch. 102. God damn, he's a Velo 105. And he's coming to bat in the bottom of the ninth. Here comes the pitch and a hit. Hero. Another Velo. This motherfucker's on fire. Hero. Holy shit.
Hey, folks, I hope you liked my segment of Velo Heroes. Again, my production team is me, myself, and I, so I do everything. I do the singing. I can play some guitar. We're gonna have some really cool music segments throughout the season, and I really want y'all to put in suggestions throughout the coming weeks, and let me know some music types that you like, or some subject matter you want to have maybe a music segment on or about, and we'll produce it. If we have a player that's really sucking it up on your team, like really screwing you up, they're just a fuck stick, it's just pure shit, we can write a song and put it out on the live podcast here, and I'll produce it and send it your way, and we can all enjoy it. But anyway, the Velo Heroes are people that are basically doing some really good shit. So I did want to talk about a little bit of hit on a couple of those that were popping up, those names that were popping up on the screen. Now I'll start with today and backtrack, but I got to tell you today, Giancarlo Stanton hit a home run at 100. Now I got to preface this: Velo Heroes aren't always going to be the stars that hit the ball hard, or pitchers that blow everybody down that we know already. My focus will be for this to transition into people who were maybe less looked at, and in particular, we'll actually transition to. This woman's calling me, and I like her, so I better send her a message back. Anyway, so the Velo Heroes, I'll start looking and targeting people that are on the waiver wire most specifically, people that are less players on the waiver wire who are less than 70% owned. We'll highlight some of those people that are hitting the ball hard, or throwing the ball fast, or getting a lot of swing and misses. You get my drift. We want to highlight those in a general way. I'm not the kind of guy that really wants to go down and go into all the stats and the reasons why I'm talking about this guy. That's what my analytics department does. They ramble on about all the statistics relevant. All I know is it puts a flag as they're hot or they're not. And if they're hot, I want to highlight those in Velo Heroes in just a short, succinct way. So this is a long way to do this first segment, but I want to blow through some of these. Again, Giancarlo Stanton, 117.8, a home run today. Lewis Robert, 113.4 exit velocity off his bat. Big Chicago White Sox. Seattle Mariner outfielder Teoscar Hernandez hit a ball 112.6 today. And Corey Seager, shortstop for the Texas Rangers, clocked at 112.3. So, yeah, he's hitting the ball really fucking hard. Some pitching Velo Heroes. Gregory Santos, Chicago White Sox today. I think he came in the 6th inning in the game that he was in today against the Houston Astros. And against a very good hitting lineup. Nothing like last year, especially with Altuve out, Brantley's out. I don't know who else is out, but their 6 through 9 is not that great when I looked at it. But the top of their lineup still has some great hitters. And so Gregory Santos came in the 6th inning for the White Sox in relief and was just throwing 100-plus mile-an-hour pitches, one after the other. And so he's coming up with some of the top velo today, and I looked into him a little bit more, and he just had a day. I mean, so he was pumping about, in the 6th inning, I think 10 or 12 pitches over 100 miles an hour. And then I did want to mention, though, Ronaldo Lopez. Is that his name? It seems to be closing right now for the White Sox because he came in the 9th. He was pumping hundreds too. So, yeah, he's got some juice in that pitch. A guy named Johnny Brito of the Yankees, a guy that they called up because they've got these injuries and stuff with the Yankees do with their starting pitching rotation. And, boy, I'll tell you, today he performed well. He makes a velo heroes because he had 16 swing and misses today. So it's pretty good. And I believe let's look real quick. Well, let's look. Well, I was going to look and see what his. You'll just have to look up his availability in your specific leagues. I'll tell you in the future because I know in a lot of leagues Brito's still out on the waiver wire. But next week and the following weeks when I'm out doing these podcasts and we talk about velo heroes, again, a lot of those will be centered on people that are available or possibly available in your league to pick up and try to focus on that. But Brito's could more than likely be available. And again, 16 swing and misses. That's a lot, especially against a good team. Jeffrey Springs had a great outing. He had 13 swing and misses in his start with the Tampa Bay Rays. And he was talked about prior to the draft and had been talked up greatly by the analytics team. Kudos to them guys. They brought Jeffrey Springs to the fore early on. And what I used, because he was a highly drafted pitcher, when I could get a chance at him, knowing that he had good numbers towards the end of last year from my analytics department, knowing that he's been looking good in the spring, specifically by the analytics department of providing data that backed that up. I was able to prioritize him and move him up a tier or two and draft him earlier than he was normally going ADP, and then thus being able to pick him up. So I was glad to get him on some of my teams. Again, he had a great day. Some other guys have had good days since the start of the season. You've seen Spencer Strider's name up on there as far as pitching, and I mean, I can't even remember the exact stat why I put it down there, other than he was just throwing gas and looking like a number one pitcher that he was drafted at. So there's a guy that that is earning the money, earning the draft capital that you spent, so to speak. I have to call out, and you've probably seen this name and said, what the fuck is he on that list for? Aroldis Chapman, relief pitcher now for the Kansas City Royals. And I'll tell you why he's on this list. Because in the 9th inning, I believe this was on Saturday or Friday or Saturday, he had 12 pitches in the 9th inning over 98 miles an hour. His highest was a 102.5 sinker. And he's been coming in on these high velo days the couple times. I think he's made a couple appearances. He's been throwing some heat about every time he's been taking the mound. So There's something to keep a watchful eye on. A guy that's been awesome in the past and seems to at least have his velocity there. And of course, he had a lot of trouble last year with walks, and it was just a mess last year. So maybe he is focused on gaining that closer role, and that could be something to look at, somebody to pick up and or prepare to pick up should he get that closer role. There's many other guys that I could have put on this list, but I had to have Adam Duvall on there. He hit a home run. A home run was 107.4. In the same game, in the ninth inning, and I know you guys seen that because that Baltimore, I think it was McKenna, is that his name? That guy that muffed that fly ball in the ninth inning with 2 outs. He muffed a fly ball. I think it was Yoshida that hit it. Hit just a simple, real routine fly ball, popped right out of the guy's glove. Brought Adam Duvall to the plate. 1 on, 2 outs. Felix Bautista on the mound, throws up a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, and Adam Duvall sends it out at 106.7 for the win. Now, he was on my target list. You know, I have lots of players on my draft targeting list, and unfortunately, I didn't draft him in any of my leagues. I felt like I got players that were, they were ranked or rated better by the time I got to the last round. But you probably could have picked Adam Duvall up in the 20, 21, 22, one of those rounds, if not the very last. And he appears to look very comfortable at Fenway Park. And I think there's a guy that if he's available in your leagues, there's somebody to at least keep a watchful eye out for, because he's hitting the ball extremely hard. I have to say that over the weekend, one of the strangest velo heroes, and this might be unprecedented the rest of the year, Trace Thompson hit 3 balls that ended up in 3 home runs in the same game at the exact same exit velocity. 107.5. I don't know. We could probably live to be 100 years old and not see that shit again. I don't know how rare that is, but it seems awfully fucking rare to have 3 different home runs in the same game at the exact same velo to the decimal point. And I'll throw this in, off 3 different pitchers. So, Trace Thompson, kudos. Brother to Klay Thompson, NBA star, if you don't know. But I got to tell you, and I throw Matt Olson on there. He hit a 111.4 home run, and then in the same game hit a 111.0 home run. So Matt Olson is smoking right now. I do have to throw Corey Seager out there because he hit a 110 mile per hour single off of Jose Alvarado. Who's he with? Philly? And that was a 100-mile-an-hour pitch. He hit a 110 single off that. I thought that was interesting. Another one I got to throw out there is one of my stud draft targets this year was Jordan Walker, third base for the St. Louis Cardinals. Well, I say third base, outfield, whatever, depending on your league platform, how he's being positioned, what positions he's eligible for. But as far as batting, he hit 2 balls, and they were singles at over 200, or 200. That'd be really spectacular. At over 105 miles an hour. So Jordan Walker knocking the fuck out of the ball. So I wanted to touch on those velo heroes, and hopefully that'll help you if any of them in the weeks ahead, if you start seeing these velo heroes, you look them up on the waiver wire and give them a check and see if it's somebody that you can fulfill a need on your roster. I don't think it. I think it's too early to make a lot of judgments about players for the season. But I will also tell you, I make moves when I need to make moves. I've already made 3 or 4 moves in my various leagues, and I make moves when I know to make them. If you're folks out there that drafted Grayson Rodriguez and he got sent down to the minors, you just need to cut bait, let him go, put him on the way, put him out there in the free agent world. Hopefully, if you hear him come back around and get called up, maybe try to pick him up. But don't. In most leagues, you cannot keep a roster player in the minor leagues like that without just taking up a roster space. You can't put them on an IL or anything. So just cut bait and let them go. I had another one, Christopher Morel. I drafted in the last round on one of my fantasy teams, and I was surprised he got sent down to the minors, especially after having a good spring. But that shit happens out there, folks. The thing is what do you do in response to it? Like a lot of things in life, you know what I mean? So I did want to do, and if you hear some pages turning, it's because I'm still old school and I write a lot of shit down. And that's just the way I fucking do it. I did want to go in and do a quick review, a draft review, because I want to tie it in to tie the room together, like the dude says on The Big Lebowski about his rug tying the room together. Anyway, we're going to tie this all together about why it's relevant, what we've already done, which is the draft. And you're thinking, well, why the hell talk about the draft that's already over? Well, there's some important things that I went back and looked at and I wanted to share with you to reemphasize using a good draft strategy and draft tools as I described in those BadAzz sessions to be better at fantasy baseball. So I'm going to use the example of the Yahoo leagues that I drafted in, which were 3 leagues in Yahoo, just like last year. They were all 3 12-team leagues, head-to-head categories. 2 of them are standard. 1 of them is basically standard with a couple of very minor changes. One with a minimum, well, that's not really minor, the minimum pitching innings a week you have to pitch. And this is a friends and family league that's a little different. And they did not use batting average, and they replaced it with OBP, or on base percentage. But for the most part, it's pretty much a straight up 12-team standard head-to-head categories, 5x5 categories. Pretty straightforward. Of the total of these 3 teams, I ended up having 8 players on my roster I had 8 players that were on all 3 of my teams. They were drafted on all 3 of my teams. 8. I had 10 players on my roster that were on 2 of the 3 teams that I drafted. And I don't have to tell you that general number. When we talked about earlier, if you'd listened and checked out my previous sections, we talked about how prepping for and building a good draft board or tiers list, and then exercising that list, that list that is made to achieve your goals in fantasy baseball, to achieve the goals that you set before you created that draft board. And in my case, a tiers list, a priority list, a power list, a rankings list, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Your list, your targets. I had 18 out of 23 roster slots with players with players on my target list and on at least 2 of the 3 teams. 18 out of 23. I was really happy with that. This is the first year I'm tracking that specific, so that will roll into my after action review at the end of the year, and I'll be able to do some comparisons, or at least review that next year when I develop a draft strategy for next season. I can go in and use these numbers, and I don't have to go back and look for it. So specifically with pitchers, I had 3. I drafted 3 pitchers that ended up on all 3 teams. And those pitchers were relief pitcher for the San Francisco Giants, Camilo Doval, a starting pitcher for the Los Angeles Angels, Reed Detmers, and Chicago Cubs starter Hayden Wesneski. So those were 3 that were on all 3 teams pitching wise. Now I had 4 4 pitchers that were on 2 of 3 teams. And that was Luis Castillo, of the starting pitcher for Seattle, which he was my number 1 target, by the way. And and just to tell you this, I really like Luis Castillo. I just think he's a stud. I had targeted him prior to the draft to draft him in round 5, and almost all the mock drafts that I did, almost all of them, I got him in the 5th round. So out of one of those 3 leagues, somebody went up to round 4 and grabbed him. And I will tell you, this stuff happens. Again, when you go into a draft, you don't always get all the players that you target the number 1. Like if in a perfect world, I want these in every position, this player and that player. But you'll get most of them if you exercise the right tools. Some of the other 4 pitchers that were on 2 of my 3 drafts that were drafted on my rosters are Hunter Green of the Cincinnati Reds, Chris Sale of the Boston Red Sox, and Sonny Gray of the Minnesota Twins. So I was able to get a lot of these guys multiple times. I had 5 batters on all 3 of my teams, and I was really happy with that, because my priority in drafting anyway is predominantly hitters early on, and I do sprinkle in a number 1 starter and a number 1 reliever in the first 7 rounds. But them other 5, within those 7 rounds, I'm looking at hitters. So I was really really happy to go back and look at this and be able to validate that I had 5 really hard targets that I wanted to get, and I got 5 of those batters on all 3 teams. That's Bobby Witt Jr. of Kansas City Royals, Michael Harris III of the Atlanta Braves, Taylor Ward of the Angels, Anthony Volpe of the Yankees, and Jonathan India of the Reds. So I was really happy to have guys like that on all my teams. I had also we had hold on, let me 6. We had 6 batters on 2 of 3. I had 6 batters on 2 of 3 teams, and that was Shohei Ohtani, Randy Arozarena, Jordan Walker, Brandon Drury, Miguel Vargas, and Corbin Carroll. So I was really happy. I'm just really satisfied with my draft results. I think the consistency in drafting and predictability in my draft experience this year can be attributed to good draft planning. Again, if you follow the draft preparation, or at least take some of those tips and things, I don't pretend to be the rocket scientist and the wizard of fantasy baseball, but I do believe it helps you become a better player if you apply some of these just basic, simple steps. I don't have any really, really this big encompassing war plan with formulas and algorithms to spit out your championship ring. Pop it out of my ass into your finger. Here you go. Your championship ring. It don't work like that. And you'll see I'm very humble too during the season. If I make some mistakes, and I'll tell you. I already told you I drafted 2 people that end up get sent down to the minors. So I have no issue, because this stuff happens in fantasy baseball, no matter how good you are at playing. I wanted to, specifically on some targets. I did want to share with you, I had Anthony Volpe in 2 of 3 leagues because I moved way up and projected to move way up to get him. And I had to go up to the 8th round in one league and the 9th round in another. And really late, before I drafted last week, I was really moving him up a lot. I mean, at one point, I think he maybe started on my tiers list at about 18 or 20. He might actually, I take that back. I think initially he was in my very last group tier, which is a huge tier where I just dump people who may be good. And then I think I moved him up to 20 or 18. And then by a couple of days before the draft, or the day of these drafts that I got him in 2 leagues, he had already been, the word had already came out that the Yankees, he was going to be on the opening day roster. So the bargains on him were over with after that. And I moved him up quite a bit because I think he's an exciting player. Who knows if he's going to be a fantasy stud in his rookie campaign. But I do know at this moment, I think he has 3 stolen bases. So we're four game days into the season. Also, Taylor Ward. I got him in 2. I targeted him heavy as well and drafted him in the 8th and 9th round, respectively, to get him in 2 of 3 of my leagues. Jordan Walker, who I got, I got him in 2 of my 3 leagues. I was happy to do that. I got him in the 12th round in one league, which again was moved up a lot from just a week prior, because once he made that opening day roster. In the other league, I drafted him in the 10th round, so I really went up and grabbed him. But it was a pretty aggressive draft, and sometimes you can see trends of people trying to move the bar on drafting people, and sometimes you just go for it and grab them a couple rounds early. Miguel Vargas, I feel really good about that draft pick. I got him in 2 or 3 leagues, drafting him in the 17th and 18th round. So, and I think I had him targeted in the 18th. So that was really good to get him, I felt like. I also like the idea that right now in Yahoo, his position eligibility is first base, but I think he's going to get other eligibility, which is going to really make his value increase if he gets second base eligibility. Let's see. On the pitcher side, I drafted Camilo Doval in all 3 of my leagues, and I got him. Mostly, I had to go up in the 6th round to get him, and I was prepared for that because relievers, as we know, and we talked about this on previous sessions and podcasts about once these top relievers started going down, before we even talked about drafting, Liam Hendricks was down with cancer, still out. We have Raisel Iglesias down now. And when you start losing people like that off the top of the list, the very top, Edwin Diaz, right off the top of the list, it just really lowered the supply of known or who we could reasonably predict that they were going to be the opening day closer. And of course, as you know, that'll be a hodgepodge of shit during the year because it changes so much. But I was glad to get Camilo Duvall. I had targeted him originally in my tiers at the 7th round. So to go up to the 6th to get him in all 3 of my leagues, you forget about that round you went up to get somebody. You just know you got him. So I'm happy to get him. Another pitcher, Reed Detmers. I had target thanks to the analytics department. I had been targeting Reed Detmers. I knew Reed Detmers from last year. I knew he'd come on board early. I knew he threw a no-hitter. I knew he got sent back down to the minor leagues. And he came back, and he looked pretty good at the end of the year. And I think that there was just a lot of people in the fantasy baseball world talking, praising about his upside potential this year. And I got him in the 16th, 17th round in my 3 Yahoo leagues that I drafted him. And I also took Chris Sale, as I said earlier, I took him in 2 of my 3 Yahoo leagues. And I would have took him in the 3rd if I could have got him. But even though he got off to a rough start in his first outing, I think at the 13th round, I wasn't taking a whole lot of risk. And, of course, we know Chris Sale, if he's 75, 80% of Chris Sale before, I'll take that any day in the 13th round. Okay, so a good way to put this, encapsulize why I think the draft tools and really putting an effort prior to the draft is important, is that predictability. And I feel very satisfied that the rosters and the players on my rosters have come from my work and then my targeting, and then to get most of those players in most cases just really makes me happy. I think I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get O'Neal Cruz in a couple leagues, but that's because I had targeted him in the 6th round, and I thought that in most of the mock drafts, I was getting him there. But when the real drafts came down, we had people going up to the 4th round to grab him. And I'm not saying he's not worth it. That just was way too disruptive to my draft plans. So I don't normally let that primary target, position player target that I want go. But at the 4th round, I didn't see it coming. I couldn't have done anything about it. But I had no plans. The most I had planned to do with O'Neal Cruz was go up 1 and get him. I was prepared and willing to go up to round 5, especially in the league where I was unable to get Luis Castillo in round 5. But again, somebody drafted him in round 4, and I'm not so sure that person isn't going to be really happy anyway, because I think O'Neal Cruz is just going to be an absolute stud, and I wish I had him. He is a stud already, but I think he's going to be more so. Just out of informational sake, in those 3 leagues I drafted, and of course, as you know, Yahoo, it's a completely random, computerized, random draft picks. Who picks from what draft position? I picked in the 8th. I had the 8th pick in one league. I had the 10th in another, and I had the 12th pick in one. And I actually liked that. That was a hell of a benefit, in my opinion, to either be on the front end, middle, or end, and to be all 3 leagues like that. And I know that contributed to some of the predictability that allowed me to get some of these targets on my roster in most of my teams. That, I think, really helped too. That was a contributing factor, because anybody that's been out there doing mock drafts knows when you practice from different positions, for that very reason, because there's some differences in the flow of the draft. Who's available on your target list may ebb and flow a little differently depending on where your draft position is, being maybe at the front of the draft, the very back of the draft, or the middle of the draft. So to be able to draw 3 positions that are really close to each other in one section of the draft, I felt really good about it, and I think that helped as well. My guess is B, I might have a little less redundancy or multiple players on my target list on my team had I been picking second or third in 1 or 2 of those drafts. But that's the note and closing the book on drafting this year. That's it. I've already, and I encourage you to go back, look at the draft while it's fresh in your mind. Go back and look at what you did and what you achieved, because the draft portion is over. It's closed. The only thing I do with the draft at the end of the year is I do some analysis with where I drafted players and where they ended up in the rankings, performance ranking, how they performed, where'd they rank. I draft them at 110 and they performed at 135 at ranking. That's important to me at the end of the year. And it's a way to assess, hey, these are the players that I had on my team, and these are the ones I drafted that performed above. These are the ones that performed below where I drafted them, and I can use that to help me be a better drafting general manager next year. So close the books on the drafts until the end of the year, and then do some of those comparisons, and we'll talk about that later in the year too, as we wind down the season. But that's a long road to hoe at this time. So I wanted to go to another section, another segment, and I wanted to premiere this segment, and it's called the Broke Dick Report. And it's about injuries. And it's general in nature, and I'll follow up on those if they deserve to have some specificity to them. But the Broke Dick Report, the name came from an old Army name, because in the Army, when we used to have a soldier, we'd say they fell out, or they fall out. Now, they didn't physically fall down or anything. We're not like have no sense of concern and care for our fellow soldiers. But when we had soldiers that were repeatedly going on what's called sick call right before our physical training session in the morning, we would start calling them broke dick. Now, I know that don't work out in the civilian world, but fuck it. We're on the World Wide Web, and the FCC is not over my fucking shoulder. So we call it like we see it. And you know me about injuries, how I've said it all along. I basically consider players injured, not injured, or coming back off an injury. That's it. I don't analyze players and say, if healthy, he can do this. I hate that. Quit saying that out there in the fantasy baseball world. Train yourself. I've had to catch myself not saying it, because you fuckers out there in the fantasy baseball world say it too goddamn much. So stop saying that shit, if healthy. Fuck, everybody's a certain performance if healthy. That's part of the reason why we play the game, because you can't predict that. It's an intangible kind of thing in the scoring system in our rosters and competing, so fuck it. All we can do, though, is we can consider them that. They're not injured, they're injured, or they're coming back off an injury. So that's all I want to know. And if they're coming back off an injury, I kind of want to have a little basic idea of what the prospectus is on that, or what's the prognosis, or with respect to them being able to perform at or near their pre-injury performance level, I guess I should say. So without further ado, for you people watching on YouTube. And then those of you listening on audio will hear the song or the music background for the Broke Dick Report. So without further ado, enjoy this, and we'll talk about injuries. We'll talk about injuries in just a second.
Yeah. Put them all together, lame, lazy, and sick. In fantasy baseball, they're all broke dick. A broke dick. Broke dick. Discomfort, aches and pains, hamstring, lat, and oblique strains, forearm tendonitis, plantar fasciitis. Just what the hell is bursitis? And you know the season's gone when you feel the sorry ass heads for Tommy and John.
I hope you enjoyed the first maiden voyage of the Broke Dick Report. I won't go into a lot of, we'll mention injuries. I'll mention them along the way and some prognosis that I hear through my, I'm itching like a motherfucker. I don't know. I'll get some more information from my analytics department that'll fill me in on certain people that are injured or coming back off injury and such, because it does play a big role in fantasy baseball. It does. And players and people that have played fantasy baseball, you guys all fucking know. Injuries are all the time, all season. I mean, we're going to have them. Get ready. I mean, they happen, and especially with pitchers, they happen all the fucking time. So, as far as injuries go, I mean, of the names and such that I did cover on there, I think what I'll do in the future is focus on strategies with respect to how to use that information on people that are injured to be a better fantasy baseball player, manager out there. I just think one of the simplest things is something I already touched on before, is just that simple strategy of go look at the waiver wire now. Go look at it while it's early. And go down, and in Yahoo or the other platforms, they all indicate on their player list their status with respect to whether they're injured. If they're on the 7-day IL, the injured list, or the 15-day, 30-day, 60-day, it'll list it there. And I would suggest that you go do a little research and run through that and see if there's any really good or players you perceive could be good that are on the IL. And depending on the length of the IL and the type of injury that they're having, prognosis of coming back and playing, it really means less of whether, because you're not really taking any risk at this time. Unless you have somebody on your roster already that's injured, you have 4 IL slots. So I encourage you all to go out there and look and see if Liam Hendriks is on your waiver wire. And if he is, I suggest to you, don't make any rash decisions, because if you have a full roster, and let me talk specifically about Yahoo Standard 12-team league. If you're in a 12-team league, or any team league for that, and you go on to the waiver wire on Yahoo and you find Liam Hendriks, and if you have somebody on your roster now that you feel like that you don't want to have on the roster for whatever reason, then I would make that move immediately. Go out there and pick up Liam Hendriks, drop that player on that roster slot to free it up because unless you're in a league that allows you, and we had if you go back and look at the BadAzz session that I just posted, you'll get more in-depth information about this. But if you go in there and drop a player and you add Liam Hendriks, you can do that in a standard league, but you have to drop somebody if your roster's full. Some league settings will set league settings where you can pick up a person on the IL on waivers and add them directly to your roster, to the IL, without dropping any rostered players. So check that out with your league settings and find out how they carry that. Like I said, most of them require you to have a roster slot open to put that IL player in, which just means simply once you do drop someone or just you have a slot, you put Liam Hendriks on your roster. You wait till the next day because you cannot put him in the IL slot. So he's going to sit in your roster slot until the next day. And then the next day you take him and move him to your IL slot, go back to the waiver wire and pick someone up, put on your roster. Then you could conceivably have a number one reliever sitting in your IL. If he never comes back if he recovers but he's not able to play this year or what have you, you haven't lost anything. You only have to make a decision about him, Liam Hendriks, at that point when and if you get to where all four of your IL slots are full and you have someone else get hurt. Then you have to make a decision on Liam Hendriks. I mean, the chances of that are rare, but I've had teams that have had more than four people on the IL, but that's not common. So I think that's a good move. You can apply that to other players, whether it's Lance McCullers Jr. out there. He's on the IL. You can check him out if you like him. And you want to add him, you can do that same move to pick up people on the IL that are on the IL on the waiver wire and put them on your roster and hold them. Something that you can do that I believe is beneficial, and I talked about specifically in the BadAzz session, episode 4 that I just posted, with respect to tracking your category scoring throughout the season. Now, you don't have to do it you don't have to do any of this, but I do recommend that you do this every week because I think it's a good assessment tool. And I'm going to give you a quick brief on what I touched on that if you missed it and tell you why it's important. So let me, pull this up real quick. Oops, I'm on the wrong screen, folks. For those of you listening on audio, you did not see that fuck up of transitioning from one screen to another. But I'm getting there. In season, here we go. All right. Now, those of you watching on YouTube can see that what appears to be like a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet. This is actually, I have a Mac, so this is a in the numbers app. And I created this basic spreadsheet to track. And what this is for is to track your category scoring as a team each week. And it becomes really important, valuable assessment tool the more weeks you get into the season, obviously, because the averages and stuff will accumulate and you'll get more depth and a bigger sample of your data. But I tracked this last year, so if you didn't last year, I mean, you might. I don't know if you can go back in the. I don't know. I don't think you can go back in the historical data of your week by week competition. So if And if that pans out, that's even more reason to do this, every week or if you miss a week, you can always go back into, at least on Yahoo, you can go back into the previous week of competition or any week's competition and look at those numbers. But I think it's good to do it every week or as close to every week as you can, so you can use it as an assessment tool weekly in determining how your team is performing, how you're competing in your current league. Now, just real quick, across the top of this chart, as you can see if you're watching it on audio, is a week by week, starting with week 2, all the way through the season, week 25 of the playoffs for my league. Obviously, in your league, if your league settings are different with respect to how many weeks you play, how many weeks of playoffs, you'll want to get that information before you build a list like this. I said in the BadAzz sessions that I will post this out on the website at badazzsports.com. That's BadAzz with 2 Z's, sports.com. You can go pull that form up and don't even have to create it. And you can make whatever little adjustments that you need to and use this. And the formulas are already set up, so pretty simple form I'm using. I'm not, again, no rocket scientist. What I used as a basis of information, because what I want this to do is to show using last year's baseline of scoring for each week. So this is capturing a weekly scoring. I have weekly averages for the whole season last year in one of my columns. And it has it not only has the 5x5 scoring categories I track, but the 2 additional categories on the match. When you go to your matchups screen in your fantasy baseball app, where you can see the categories that you're competing in, and specifically with Yahoo, but it's very similar in the other formats, the other platforms. So within that, I took these averages, and then I also added what it shows on the matchup is the number of at-bats that my team has in a week and the number of innings pitched that my pitchers have in a week. The other 10 categories here are actually the scoring categories. But I think it's very valuable, too, to keep track and know the number of at-bats. Are you getting enough at-bats? Because it's a part of accounting stats, and I'm not a big stats guy, other than I know that I want to know when I'm not getting enough at-bats, because then you can look at, well, why is that? Do I have too many players that are batting too far down in a rotation, or are on a team that is so bad that it's drastically affecting their ability to get at-bats? It could be a number of things. But you don't know if you don't have something flag it to look at it. I purposely removed weeks 1 and week 15 out of this tracking, just like I did last year, because those are the long weeks, and I could have done that, and I could do a formula, whatever, and make it into a condensed 7-week statistic, but I just throw those out. And just use week 2. It gives me plenty of sample, and actually it gives time week 2 for things to settle in, and I think I get a better representation. But that's why I choose not to have you won't see week 1, or you won't see week 15. You'll see it start back down here in the bottom part of this chart. You'll see it starts at 16. So anyway, these are my averages from last year all the way down, all the way down here, at-bats, home runs, ERA, everything. And what you do is just simply put in the score you had at-bats at the end of the week. Week 2, let's say at-bats, I had 260 at-bats in week 2, and then I had 30 runs, and I had 12 home runs. And let's say I had 31 ribbies. Now just look at this, what that formula sets up immediately just by typing in those numbers. it'll go across and it'll accumulate the 2023 average. Of course, I only put one number in there, but let's show you. For if I put something in week 3, it'll change the average, and it's at 260 at bats, 270 at bats, and then you have an average. Your 2023 average at bats weekly is 265, and then you go over and how that aligns with last year's numbers, and it'll either show in the last category, in the far right category, the difference. Is it a negative or a positive? And I chose to have a conditional highlight for those that are above the 2022 averages, so it's easy to see. Of course, if it's not highlighted green, it's below average, and I need to know that. I want to know that too. Again, if you're listening to this on audio, you can either pause this or come back to this and go when you can get access to view your computer or phone or iPad, whatever you're using. You can go pull this up on the website and actually look at it and then go through it and see what I'm talking about. So that's how I track it. And I have 3 tabs here for the 3 different teams. So I can just quickly go in and enter that information and have a really good, in my opinion, some assessment data at the end of the year to turn over into the next year. Have some kind of baseline. I think it's always important to have a baseline of idea of what's a good score, whether I won or lost that week in the 10 categories. How am I performing? Because that's all I can really affect. And again, I can go back to my drafting strategies. My overall strategy is high win percentage, the highest winning percentage I can gain. Where I place in all this, those things happen. Good things happen when you win on a consistent basis, and that's my goal, to win consistently throughout the year. And I hope if that's your goal, I hope that the tools like this can help you. So we're going to clear that screen for you folks out there watching, and we're going to put my beautiful damn face back on here, if I can find it. There we go. Jesus. It's like, okay. So I hope this live stream podcast tonight has been helpful to you. I did want to show you, if you can see this. I don't know. I've tried this before. I've got a better plan. But it would take me to move around. I hope you can see this card. I got it in the mail today. Bought it on eBay. It's a rookie Gunnar Henderson card. Really like him. And let me share with you something about cards I've found. I like to open packs. It's fun and all that. But I get less and less where I really enjoy doing that. You get so many. It's almost better sometimes, honestly, to go in and just buy cards on eBay or whatever that you like, or go on Tops Now and buy specific, players that you like or whatever. Because I really think in the end, I think you end up spending a lot more money when you just buy these boxes and you get lucky every once in a while. I mean, because I get lucky. I open a hobby box or something sometimes and I get an autograph card or whatever, and that's cool. But I do like buying individual cards too these days, because I got enough of that stuff laying around. I got cards all over here behind me. And we'll go into those sometime and talk baseball cards for you folks out there that are baseball card enthusiasts. But I wanted to show you that Gunnar Henderson Topps rookie card. Really like Gunnar Henderson. Didn't get him on all my draft in my leagues. Actually, I only got him in one, I think. But, he was a high target that I came up short on. So to reach out to me out there, thanks, first of all, for checking in with the BadAzz Fantasy Baseball podcast. I really appreciate you out there. Do me a favor sometime, go out and touch my Twitter account out there, and it's at roto_Rudy. That's ROTO_Rudy, RUDY. I could use some followers out there, and I'm not begging. I'm not in this for numbers of people to come flocking. But if you're watching this and you get anything out of it, shoot me a hello and follow me and tell me what your favorite team is or favorite player, and I will send you a card or cards that will be badass, sent directly from me to you. And all you have to do is say, hey, come out and follow me, tell me who you like out there, and I'll send that out in the mail right away to y'all. I really appreciate you checking in, loving fantasy baseball. Hope you'll interact with me throughout the season on this live stream, and reach out to me on social media as well. I'm on Facebook at BadAzz Fantasy Baseball. You can find me on Facebook. Come out there and like that page as well. And that's my expanse on social media. So I don't have to go ramble on about the 14,000 things I want you to check, survey, star, I don't know what the fuck, all kinds of shit. But if you just do one of those, it'd be great. If you're watching this on YouTube and just say, hey, I like it, or subscribe, and you'll get a notification when I go live, and I can tell you that might be beneficial only in this respect. From a real perspective is if I go on and do a special edition podcast or something and go live, you'll get a notification about that. Otherwise, you'll miss it, and that's how I miss them a lot. Is I found that those 3 or 4 fantasy baseball podcasts I like to listen to, I go in there and subscribe, and then make sure my notifications are on so I get notified when they go live. So that's just a tip for you there. Appreciate you. You can also catch me out there on audio on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So I'm not out on a lot of things, and I have a website, so please visit whatever works for you. But whatever platform or social media outlet works for you, just give me a hi. Give me a hello out there, or you can certainly present a question to me if you need some help with something in your fantasy baseball teams. I'll be glad to answer those questions for you. So another week ahead. We will start doing some week ahead talks on our live streams on Sunday. So today we're not looking into the coming week, which is going to be very valuable to you, but we'll definitely start including the week ahead and pitchers and hitters and matchups with teams, and how you can navigate your fantasy baseball platform so that you can kick ass and become a badass. So I hope you have good luck and a good start with your fantasy baseball teams out there. Shoot me a line, say hello. Good luck to you in your games coming up this week, your competition to finish up your long week 1, which will finish up on this next Sunday. So without further ado, have a good evening. My name's Rudy, host of the BadAzz Fantasy Baseball Podcast, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.